The most dangerous prison is the one you don't even know you're in. Ever loved someone so deeply that you didn't realize you were handing over the keys to your mind every time they touched your skin? Yeah, this one's gonna hit hard. Because what if I told you that what you called love was actually control? That they weren't holding your hand, they were holding your leash. This isn't just about heartbreak. This is about liberation. Hey folks, imagine this. Imagine your body as a piano and someone keeps playing the same 3 notes: affection, withdrawal, silence, over and over, until those 3 notes become your favorite song, until every part of you dances when they show up and collapses when they disappear. You didn't fall in love, you got trained, and you didn't even realize it because they smiled while doing it. You thought their touch meant you mattered, but really, it meant they knew exactly how to push your buttons. They didn't love you, they studied you. My friends, let me say it like this. When someone uses your body to bypass your logic, when they touch you to silence your intuition, when every kiss makes you forget the red flags, they are not loving you. They are programming you. You felt seen, but only when they wanted you to. You felt desired, but only when they needed control. But here's the good news. Your story doesn't end with them. It starts with you. Today, we break the lie. Today, we take the power back. Stand tall. Breathe deep. Say it with me in the comments. My mind is mine. Drop it below. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more truth like this. And stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 1, love wasn't what you felt. It was what they fed you. They didn't love you. They fed you affection like breadcrumbs to keep you chasing, not arriving. Let's tear off the pretty wrapping and look at what was really underneath, my friends. Because what you felt, that intense rush of emotion, that fire in your chest every time they touched you or looked at you like you were their world, that wasn't love. That was conditioning. That was training. That was a drug disguised as devotion. And they fed it to you in perfect doses, just enough to make you stay, never enough to make you feel safe. Picture this. You're a plant in a pot, stretching toward the sun. But the sun only comes out when they feel like it. One moment, they're warm, glowing, life-giving. The next, clouds, silence, coldness. And there you are, still reaching, still hoping, still twisting your roots, trying to grow toward something that keeps disappearing. You weren't in love. You were starving. And every little touch they gave you felt like survival. You might be wondering now, was it ever real? Did they ever care? And why does it hurt so much if it wasn't love? Here's the truth. They knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't loving you. They were feeding you just enough connection to keep you emotionally hooked. They were using your body as the access point to your soul. Every kiss wasn't just intimacy, it was reinforcement. Every touch wasn't affection, it was programming. The lie you believed was this: if I feel this strongly, it must be love. But intense emotion isn't proof of love. It's often the result of emotional manipulation. And here's what no one tells you. Sometimes the pain you feel when they're gone isn't because they were your soulmate. It's because your nervous system is trying to recover from the highs and lows they injected into your life like a roller coaster on repeat. You thought you were in control, that you chose to love them. But real love doesn't come with that kind of confusion. Real love doesn't leave you guessing. Real love feels calm, steady, safe. But you got addicted to the chaos, to the hit. And every time they touched you, your body told your mind, this must be love. When in truth, it was just the next wave in the cycle of control. And let me say this, it's not your fault. You were trained to believe this was love because no one taught you otherwise. Society romanticizes passion and possession. The movies show us scenes of wild intensity, arguments followed by steamy makeups, disappearing acts followed by grand gestures. But that's not love. That's trauma on a loop. That's codependency with a pretty filter on it. It's going to feel hard to accept this, I know, because admitting that it wasn't real love means grieving something you fought for, something you gave your body to, something you sacrificed your peace to keep alive. But that grief, it's holy, it's healing, because once you face it, you get to stop chasing crumbs. You get to stop twisting yourself for someone who only showed up when they needed an ego boost. You get to rebuild from truth, not illusion. So I challenge you, say it in the comments, say it to the world. I will not confuse control with love. That's your affirmation, that's your reminder, that's your declaration. Write it, own it, live it. Because the moment you do, you start reclaiming every part of yourself they tried to own. And we're just getting started, because what comes next? Oh, that's where we show you how the prison became invisible and how silence, touch and timing turned into weapons. So stay close. This is only the beginning of your freedom. Number 2, physical access became mental prison. They didn't lock you in a room, they let you in their bed and locked the door behind your mind. Let's get honest, brutally honest. You thought being close to them meant you were special. You thought their touch was proof of connection. But what if I told you that every physical moment, every intimate exchange was part of the trap? That the closeness you felt wasn't safety, it was surveillance. My friends, you weren't being held, you were being handled. Think about it. Every time they reached for you, every time they whispered in your ear, every time they touched your body when you were hurting, confused, or even just trying to think clearly, they weren't comforting you. They were resetting you, pulling you back into their rhythm, reminding your body of what your mind was starting to question. You see, physical access wasn't about closeness. It was about control. A quiet, calculated strategy to keep your body tethered to their presence so your thoughts couldn't run too far. It's like being on a leash that looks like lace. You didn't fight it because it felt soft, but it was still wrapped around your neck, and you called it love. You called it passion. But what you didn't see was how every touch shut your voice down, how every moment in their arms made it harder to walk away. They didn't need to convince you with words, they convinced you with familiarity. And I know what you might be thinking, but I let them in. I chose it. Yes, you did. But what you didn't choose was how they used your trust against you. They didn't force themselves, they just trained you to associate their touch with safety, even when their actions screamed danger. You didn't realize it, but your body became their access code, a walking password to your self-worth. And every time you allowed them in, they reinstalled the program that said, "You need me to feel okay." Let's break the lie. Physical closeness is not emotional intimacy. Just because someone touches you doesn't mean they understand you. Just because they lay beside you doesn't mean they're with you. Some people use presence to avoid presence. They use touch to silence truth. They use your own body as a tool to rewrite your mind, until one day you don't know where they end and you begin. You know what's wild? They didn't even have to say much. They'd be cold, dismissive, even cruel. But then they'd reach for you. At the exact moment you were about to stand up, they'd pull you in. A hug, a kiss, a "you know I care." And in that split second, your logic drowned in the chemicals your brain released. Oxytocin, dopamine, and boom, you stayed. You forgot why you were mad. You questioned your clarity because your body felt warmth and your mind followed. But that warmth was not safety. It was sedation. It was the anesthesia they used to keep you numb. They didn't need a cage. They just needed access. And my friends, that access became a prison you couldn't see because it felt like love. But real love doesn't mute your mind. It doesn't override your instincts. It doesn't wait for you to speak up just so it can touch you into silence. It's time to flip the script, to say it loud enough for the broken parts inside you to hear. I deserve connection that frees me. Say it in the comments. Shout it in your journal. Whisper it into the mirror if you have to. Just say it. Because the more you speak it, the more you remember who you were before they rewired your nervous system into craving what was never real. And don't go anywhere, because next we're going deeper. Into how they used withdrawal to punish you. Into how they starved your soul but called it space. Stay with me, folks. This is the unraveling. And after that comes your rebuild. Number 3, they withheld touch to punish you. They didn't hit you, they didn't scream, they just stopped touching you, and that silence screamed louder than words ever could. Let's tell the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Some people punish you not with violence, not with cruelty, but with absence. They vanish in plain sight. They stop holding your hand. They turn cold in bed. They withhold the very affection they once used to reel you in. And the worst part? You start blaming yourself for it. You think, what did I do wrong? Why did the warmth disappear? But my friends, that was never love. That was punishment, disguised as space. Let's break this down. Imagine a child reaching out to a parent for comfort, and the parent turns away. No explanation, just withdrawal. That child doesn't think they're cruel. That child thinks, I must have done something wrong. Now imagine you in that relationship. Every time they pulled away physically, every time the hugs stopped, the kisses dried up, the casual touches vanished, you didn't get angry. You got scared. You tried harder. You internalized the withdrawal as your failure. That's not love. That's conditioning. They used touch to hook you and then silence to control you. It wasn't random. It was timed, strategic. When you brought up a concern, they got distant. When you expressed your needs, they grew quiet. And suddenly, the arms that once felt like safety became weapons of emotional starvation. But because they weren't yelling, because they weren't cruel in obvious ways, you convinced yourself they just needed time. You called it maturity, you called it patience, but what it really was punishment for your voice. Here's the twisted part. When they finally touched you again, it felt like relief, like the sun finally came back out. And in that moment, you didn't feel anger. You felt grateful. Grateful for the crumbs. Grateful they were finally themselves again. But my friends, love doesn't make you beg for basic warmth. Love doesn't disappear the moment you stop playing by their rules. You were trained to believe affection was a reward. So every time they pulled it away, you jumped through hoops. You walked on eggshells. You lowered your standards. You edited yourself just to feel close to them again. And that's how they controlled you, not through force, but through lack. They starved you into submission and called it working on things. Let me hit you with a truth that might sting. Withholding affection is a form of manipulation. It's not spiritual, it's not mature, it's emotional warfare. People who truly love you don't weaponize silence. They don't vanish to win. They don't touch you only when you're obedient. That's not intimacy, that's control with velvet gloves. It's hard to admit, I know, because it means facing the reality that what you thought was sacred, what you thought was real, was a tactic. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but you need to. Because until you call it what it is, you'll keep chasing love through punishment. You'll keep shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone, and that's not a life, it's a leash. So here's what I want you to write in the comments. I will not beg for love. That's your reminder, your shield, your sword. You deserve affection that doesn't disappear when you speak up. You deserve consistency, not conditions, and stay right here. Because in the next part, we go even deeper. We're pulling back the curtain on the chemistry. How they didn't give you love, they gave you addiction. You didn't stay because of your heart. You stayed because of the high. And once you see that, everything changes. Number 4, you thought you were addicted to them, but you were addicted to the chemical high. They weren't your soulmate, they were your supplier. Let's go deeper now, my friends. This next part might make some of you sit back, stare at the wall, and whisper, "Damn, that's what it was." Because this one breaks the illusion wide open. You didn't stay because they were the love of your life. You stayed because you were addicted to what they made you feel, not who they were. You weren't in love with their soul. You were trapped in a loop, a biological, psychological, chemical loop, and they knew how to trigger it with precision. Here's how it works. Every time they gave you attention, your brain lit up. Oxytocin, dopamine, a little bit of serotonin if they threw in some validation. That late-night text, hit of dopamine, that unexpected kiss. Oxytocin, that small moment where they looked you in the eyes and said, "I miss you." Your whole system went into overdrive, and your nervous system said, "We need more of that." But here's the dark twist. They didn't keep giving it. They gave it. Then they disappeared. Gave it. Then they pulled away. Until you started chasing those highs like an addict chasing their next fix. You were caught in a cycle of reward and withdrawal. They made sure to give just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to make you feel secure. That's not love. That's a slot machine. You kept pulling the lever, hoping for another rush, another compliment, another night where they were fully present. You weren't falling deeper in love. You were falling deeper into dependency, emotional dependency, chemical dependency. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a lab experiment. You ever wonder why you felt so miserable when they were gone, even after all the ways they hurt you? Why their absence made you physically ache? Why just hearing their name could make your stomach turn, your heart race, your hands shake? It wasn't because you lost your twin flame. It was because your brain was going through withdrawal. They weren't the cure. They were the drug. And just like any drug, it started to take more and more to feel okay. Their touch didn't excite you anymore. It calmed your anxiety. Their words didn't make you happy. They just stopped the spiraling thoughts. They became the source of your pain and the temporary relief from it. And that, my friends, is the most dangerous kind of control, when someone becomes your pain and your relief at the same time. They didn't have to lock you down. They just had to keep you chasing, keep you waiting, keep you hoping. And every time you tried to walk away, they gave you just enough to come back. That's not destiny. That's dysregulation. They conditioned your body to crave their presence like air and panic when it was gone. But here's the truth they never wanted you to realize. You were never addicted to them. You were addicted to survival. You were addicted to what it felt like to be enough for a moment, to finally be seen, to finally get what you were always begging for, just long enough to reset the pain. But it was never consistent, never stable, never love. Now it's time to cut the cord, to step off the roller coaster and let your nervous system rest. It's time to remind your body that safety isn't supposed to feel like chaos. Real love doesn't spike your heart rate. It slows it. It doesn't confuse you. It calms you. Say it in the comments. I break the cycle. Not tomorrow, not next time. Now write it to remind yourself. To remind every version of you that ever begged for just one more high. You don't need their hit. You don't need their validation. You don't need the rush. You need peace. And stay with me, because in the next part, we'll talk about how that addiction made you betray yourself, how you bent your own values just to feel close to them, and how you're going to rise, not by fighting them, but by finally choosing you. Number 5. You were trained to betray yourself for a hit of connection. Every time you ignored your gut to stay close to them, you weren't loving them. You were abandoning you. Let's break something wide open today. Not with rage, not with blame, but with truth so sharp it cuts through the fog. Because what you think was love, what you think was devotion, that wasn't loyalty. That was self-betrayal. Not once, not twice, but over and over, until it became a habit. Until you couldn't even recognize the sound of your own voice under the noise of needing to be wanted. Let me ask you something, my friends. How many times did you feel that little warning in your chest, that whisper in your mind saying, "This doesn't feel right," and still you stayed? You laughed at the joke that wasn't funny. You smiled through the silence that felt like punishment. You excused the lie. You bent your boundaries just a little, and then a little more. Why? Not because you're weak, but because they trained you to confuse closeness with connection. You weren't staying for love. You were staying for a hit of attention. It's like this. Imagine you're holding a glass, and every time you speak your truth, a drop spills. Every time you let something slide, another drop. Every time you say, "It's fine," when it's not, more water gone. And before you know it, your cup is dry. Not because you're empty, but because you poured everything into being tolerable, pleasing, acceptable. You thought if you made yourself easy to love, they'd stop making love feel so hard. But they never did, because the more you betrayed yourself, the more power they gained. They didn't even have to ask you to change. You did it voluntarily. You started editing your emotions, deleting your needs, and revising your personality just to keep the peace. And all they had to do? Occasionally look at you like you were enough. Occasionally touch you like they still cared. Occasionally remind you of the version of themselves you fell for just long enough to keep you in the loop. Here's the harsh truth. When someone makes you feel like affection is earned by silence, you're not in a relationship, you're in a transaction. They taught you to believe that love was conditional, that your boundaries were negotiable, that saying no would cost you everything. So you stopped saying it. And every time you did, you didn't just lose a part of the relationship, you lost a part of you. You stopped trusting yourself. That's what hurts the most, isn't it? Not just that they let you down, but that you let you down. You saw the red flags and still said, maybe it's just a phase. You felt the disrespect and still said, they didn't mean it. You gave them chance after chance, even as they slowly turned your backbone into a bridge they could walk across. And I get it. I really do. Because the fear of being alone is loud. The silence after a breakup feels like standing in a dark room with no walls, just echoing questions and what-ifs. But let me tell you something powerful. Your loneliness is not more dangerous than your self-betrayal. Being alone never hurt as bad as staying with someone who taught you to abandon yourself just to be chosen. So how do you heal this? You start by listening to yourself again. That voice you muted, turn it back up. That instinct you ignored, honor it. That boundary you erased, redraw it, thicker this time. Because love that cost you is not love, it's possession. Say this in the comments, say it like a vow, I will not betray myself again. Let those words mark the line. No more sacrificing your truth for temporary closeness. No more mistaking compliance for connection. You don't need to earn affection by shrinking. And don't go anywhere, because next we're exposing the root of this illusion. How they made you believe your worth was tied to how much they desired you, and how you can burn that belief down, brick by brick, and build something unshakable from the ashes. Stay with me. We're not just healing, we're reclaiming. Number 6, you started measuring your worth by their desire. They didn't have to insult you to make you feel small. They just stopped desiring you and let you do the rest. Let's tell the brutal truth here, my friends. They didn't need to break you with words. They didn't need to scream. All they had to do was look away. All they had to do was stop reaching for you, stop initiating, stop craving you, and suddenly you were questioning your entire existence. That wasn't love, that was emotional conditioning, because somewhere along the way, they trained you to believe that your worth lived in their eyes. You weren't waking up every morning wondering how you felt. You were waking up asking, do they still want me today? Did I say too much yesterday? Did I push them away? Did I ruin it? Your value became a moving target, one only they could see and only they could hit. You started chasing validation like air, and the worst part, you began to mirror their behavior. If they acted cold, you became desperate. If they showed interest again, you felt worthy again, back and forth, over and over, like a yo-yo with a heartbeat. It didn't start this way. In the beginning, they made you feel wanted, desired in ways that made you believe you were the only one. And that feeling, that high, it became your new oxygen. But then came the slow withdrawal, the delayed texts, the fading compliments, the lack of touch, and every time it happened, you didn't think, they're being distant. You thought, I must be less. That's how deep the programming went. You measured your desirability through their behavior instead of your own essence. You let their appetite decide your beauty. You let their silence dictate your value. And that, right there, is how they got in your head without saying a word. They didn't control your body, they controlled your mirror. But let me tell you something real and unshakable. You are not someone else's appetite. You are not a reflection of how much they crave you. You are not valuable only when someone wants you. You were worthy before they touched you. You were worthy after they stopped, and you'll be worthy long after they're gone. It's time to stop asking, do they still want me? And start asking, why did I ever make them the measuring stick of my self-worth? That's not empowerment, that's emotional poverty. And today, we're cashing out. Say it with me in the comments, loud and unshaken. I am not defined by desire. Because the truth is, when you stop looking for value in their eyes, you start finding it in your own. You start reclaiming what was never theirs to give in the first place. And next, we're peeling back the final layer. That passion you called magic, that chaos you mistook for love. We're about to reveal what it really was, control. And once you see that clearly, you'll never confuse it again. Stay with me because the chains are breaking. Number 7. What felt like passion was actually control. They didn't love you with fire, they kept you in flames so you'd forget how to breathe without the burn. Let's bring it home, my friends, because this is the final mask we're ripping off, the one you held closest, the one that fooled you the longest. You thought the chaos was chemistry, you thought the butterflies were proof, you thought the dizzying highs and gut-wrenching lows were the mark of real, passionate love. But what you were calling soul connection was just emotional chaos wrapped in desire. You weren't in love. You were in survival mode. They kept you spinning, hot, cold, close, distant, intense one night, indifferent the next. And because it felt so big, so overwhelming, so all-consuming, you mistook it for depth. But intensity doesn't mean intimacy. Passion isn't love if it comes with panic. If you constantly felt like you had to earn the next moment of closeness, you weren't in a relationship. You were in a storm, trying to build a home on shifting ground. Real love feels safe. Real love feels still. It doesn't flood you with adrenaline just to abandon you in silence. If they only showed up when they wanted to, if they disappeared when you needed them, if their presence felt like a reward and their absence felt like punishment, you weren't being loved, you were being handled. So let's end this chapter the way it should have started, with truth. Say it in the comments, let the world see it. Love should feel like peace. Write it, show it, remind yourself. And if this message lit something up in you, if it cracked something open, hit that like button. Subscribe for more of this kind of truth. Share it with someone who needs to wake up, because we don't run from lies anymore. We face them, we rise from them, and we never call control love again.